All right, good evening, everyone. It is time to get started. I appreciate everybody joining us. I know we have folks online as well as here in the classroom here. So this is our deep dive training sessions, and tonight we will be talking about compliance. And everybody's favorite topic, right? Compliance. So it is going to be fun. Now, some of you, this is one of the least exciting part of government contracting. But if you are someone who is like Richard, this is like the most exciting part. You're a numbers guy, and you like to crunch the numbers, and it should be exciting for all of you entrepreneurs because this is time to get paid, right? So this is a time where, compliance, you do compliance so that you can get paid. So this is that time there. So we're going to do that. We're going to be talking about compliance tonight. So we're going to be addressing, making sure that you are in compliance, making sure that the federal acquisition regulation is you're following those support. I'm going to give you some references to some potential accountants and DCA compliance people out there, and then we'll look at a few things here. So let's go ahead and go right on in. But before we do that, I want to talk about something totally off topic. Anybody been paying attention to Bitcoins lately?
You've been talking about Bitcoins for a long time.
Now, had you bought Bitcoins when you first heard about it? How long ago did I tell you about Bitcoins?
January this year.
January of this year. Okay, I'm going to show you what it was right now. How much is it right now? 7,120. So had you bought one back in January of this year, January this year, it was $1,900, about $1,000 of January of this year. So $1,000 would have turned to $7,000 in about 10 months. Right? So that's why I talk about it, because this is the future of money. And so since we're talking about compliance tonight, compliance is the part where you get paid. And in the future, the way you're going to get paid is people will pay you in Bitcoins. So at some point, when you're doing consulting work, you're doing contracting work, I think the government will probably be the last people to say, we're going to take Bitcoins and we're going to pay you Bitcoins. They might be the last one to adopt. But everybody else will start to adopt. In fact, right now we are at the point where the innovators, we've passed already. The early adopters, that's happening right now. We're about to get into the early majority. So we're about to make that C curve, right? And the early majority starts to happen right now, or they're hearing about it, and they're start to do that. And then we're going to get to the majority, and then we're going to get to the late majority, and then they're going to be the laggards, right? Even your grandma one day will say, "Oh yeah, don't send me a check, just pay me by Bitcoins," and they're going to be adopted too. Just kind of like your grandma knows what Facebook is; she has a Facebook account now. But back in the days, who cares, right? So Bitcoins is the future. So it's about getting paid, and your client's going to pay you through Bitcoins, and other people's going to pay you through that. So that's why I keep on bringing that up. So let's go to the software. Yes.
Can we pay our membership or our rent with?
Yes, I'm actually in the process of setting that up. So we are. If you want to take Bitcoins as payment, go to bitpay.com. Bitpay.com is an Atlanta-based company, and it takes, it's easier to set this up than probably your credit card merchant company, because you don't need Visa, you don't need MasterCard, you don't need to sign up with the merchant account, anything. You just sign up with BitPay, and they'll show you how to set up payments. That's it. You can start taking payments.
Just start taking payments?
Yeah, people can pay you by just using their phone and hitting. There's a little scanner. Scan the QR code and hit pay, and you're done. Just as easy as Apple Pay or Google Pay, and very easy. So it's free to set up. There's no cost to set up with BitPay. and the fees are low. Credit cards is what, 2.5, 3.5. PayPal is about 3. BitPay is, I believe, don't quote me, but I believe it's less than 1%.
Someone is not a question, but actually when you convert Bitcoin, you convert it back to dollar. So you will be taxed.
They treat Bitcoin not as money. They treat it, now I'm not going to give you advice, accounting advice or tax advice, so I'm going to share with you my opinions. So Bitcoin, based on the IRS current rulings, is that it's not currency, it's not money. They treat it as an asset. So for example, think of it as a real estate property. So you invest in a real estate property, you don't pay taxes when you buy a real estate property. Some properties have county taxes where you have to, and city taxes, but Bitcoins don't have county city taxes. So you buy an asset, and the Bitcoin property goes up in value over time. So how you bought one coin in January, now it's worth 7,000, but you don't pay taxes on that until you convert it back to US dollar. When you sell the asset, then you capture a gain, what they call capital gains, right? And so capital gains right now is about 15%. So 15% of $6,000 on a Bitcoin, so you just kind of pay that.
It depends if it is long term.
Yeah, and you can.
If it's on a year, it's the tax bracket.
Okay, yeah. So you know more about that than I am. See, I told you I'm not an accountant.
Can you tweak the focus just a little bit?
Sure.
A little fuzzy.
Yes.
I'm in my glasses.
It's your glasses, man.
Okay. All right. Now we're good.
Yeah, it's. I think Richard and Myra, they didn't have their glasses on, so they just and everybody sat through it, didn't complain. So Richard, just FYI, the focus is this little white bar on the side here.
Okay.
That's it. Focus.
Oh, that's what I need to know. You know my car?
The white bar on the right hand side. That's the All right, so we're talking about compliance. So let's go into compliance. Everything that we've talked about to this point here, we've talked about how to win a contract. Now we're going to talk about how to keep your contract, right, and how to get paid. Compliance has to do all with that there. So before I go into all this here, I will preface that I'm not an attorney, I'm not a CPA, I'm not giving you any professional advice. I'm just going to educate you so you can make good decisions about this whole process here. And you want to pay attention to most of FAR, but FAR Part 3 is actually one of the key component. Anybody read FAR Part 3 yet?
Actually, I started reading today.
Okay,
And I had
awesome.
a question that I
Yeah.
had for the class earlier.
So FAR Part 3 talks about don't bribe the contracting officer. That's really what it's saying. And I'm saying it in a very shortcut way. Don't do favors. Don't go to a contracting officer and give them a gifts. If you do buy them lunch, can you buy a contracting officer lunch?
Yes.
Yes. What's the threshold? $25 or less. And so yes, you can, or if you go visit them at their office, right? You're out there marketing and you're meeting with a small business specialist or you're meeting with a contracting officer. Can you give them a cup with your logo on there? Yeah, you can.
You can?
Yeah. If it's less than $25, yeah. But don't get one with the gold rim, like 24 karat gold around the. So you just have to be smart, but so that's part of it, and so that's what this is talking about. Most of this is talking about. So, but that's enough about that there. So let's go back. to other areas of compliance. So you say you had a question, Sonia?
I accidentally logged out, but and I didn't screenshot it, so just give me a second.
Okay, well, so I'll continue. The DCA compliance is probably one of the more important things you have to consider when you're doing, when you're dealing with compliance. So DCA stands for Defense Contract Audit Agency. Now you see the word defense. What agency do you think that's tied to?
For the military?
Yes, Department of Defense. But they actually regulate contracts outside of DoD, but I would say the bulk of all the contracts that they regulate is DoD contracts. DoD is the Army, Air Force, Navy, Marines, and a few other smaller agencies. They represent about 60% of contracting dollars. So if you're in the federal government market, at some point you're going to do work with the DoD. DCA is going to be an agency that you're going to have to work with to stay in compliance. I put all kinds of different things in here, so let's look at a few of these FAQs. What is DCAA and all these different things. Now, I'll give you the short summary of when you need to consider making sure that you're DCA compliant. Your accounting system has to be compliant. That's what they're saying. So if you're using QuickBooks, you have to do your cost structure in an appropriate way so that it meets a standard, not only just GAAP standard for accounting practices, but also DCA standards as well, which is a higher level of standard on top of GAAP. So if you do that, then you'll do this here. So the way most of you, as you grow your business, you might start off when you first start your business, you use Excel to track your accounting, right? And then you say, oh, this is not going to last very long. And then you say, okay, I need to get QuickBooks. And then you invest $200 into QuickBooks. And you use your QuickBooks to manage your business and so forth. So at some point, you're going to say, okay, hey, you know what? I need to be DCA compliant. So the way you do that is you get an accountant, not any accountant, because I would say 80% of accountants does not understand DCA compliance. So you can't just go to your bookkeeper, because your bookkeeper definitely doesn't probably know about DCA compliance. Your tax preparer probably doesn't know about DCA compliance. You want to go to a specialist. It's kind of like attorneys, right? Or doctors. If you have an issue with your throat, do you want to go to the podiatrist? No. If you have an issue with your, with something with your blood, you don't want to go to the dentist. I mean, you want to go to this right person that's going to treat you well. So DCA compliance are accountants who specialize in government contracting and understanding these regulations here. Contracts, when you start winning contracts over $1 million, that's when you start wanting to make sure that you have DCA compliance. And the way you set this up is you go to an accountant who specializes in it. You say, hey, you know what? I'd like to hire you to do a pre-audit, a pre-DCAA audit. You don't want the DCAA to come and do an audit, because at that point you're not going to pass. So you want to do a pre-audit and pay, it's affordable. Most of them are not, because they're going to come, they want your business. And so they're going to come and they might glance through it very easily, quickly to see if you're in compliant or not. And so most of them will probably do a quick review to say, hey, you know what, you got some issues here. But some of them, if you do a pre-audit, they will charge you a few $100s. They're going to do pre-audit and they say, okay, hey, you got some issues and this is what you needed to fix it. And then that's when you say, okay, you know what, how much does it cost to fix it, to make sure that I am more than ready if I should ever get audited. And when you're, and what I mean, some things, I'll give you some general level understanding of what this means. They don't want to find out that you're selling the government toilet seats for $1,000. You're selling hammers at $500 and nails at $1 each. That's what they don't want. So they want to make sure that your cost accounting is structured properly, and that you're not, paying, all kinds of, different things that's not regulated, and that you're not hiding money, and that you're going to have fair pricing to the government. And so that's from a high level, but I'm not an expert, so I can't go into more details than that. So you had a question?
Yes. How do we find an accountant that knows how to do this?
We have 2 or 3 that are members of the association. So they are members of the association. I can kind of give you their website.
I have one that's going to be joining next week or next week after next.
So Macintosh Accounting in Lawrenceville. This is their information. 301-802-8831. She's here in Atlanta. She's from the NCR area, National Capital Region, and so she's got experience up there, but she moved to Georgia, so that's why she practiced in this area. So she's one. And who's the other one? Neal System.
Neal System.
Yeah. So Neal Systems. So Neal System is actually one of our partners here. So, excuse me? Third one? Yeah. So Neal System, they have a little bit more than just accounting services. So Neal System does like more robust. So if you're winning a $500,000 million contract, Macintosh is great. Neal System can kind of take you to a new software called Deltek. And Deltek is a accounting software that is very compliant and is built specifically for government contractors. So it's a accounting software designed specifically for this industry. And it's the one that the government really liked. A contracting officer, compliance officer, they like this here because this is designed specifically to meet all the regulations from a DC accounting perspective. And so they have that software. And it's a little bit more expensive, it's like 200 times more expensive, no, probably 2,000 times more expensive than QuickBooks. So great place to start is someone like Macintosh. As you start to get to some bigger contracts, then you want someone more like a Neal System. Let's see. So this is a sample. Reference DC Southeastern Maryland Office February Award Accounting System Review in accordance to FAR 42. Contracting accounting system related control. I have determined your accounting system is acceptable and approved. Incorporated continues to be responsible for establishing, maintaining an adequate accounting system for accumulating, segregating, and record costs under government contracts. So this company was audited by DCAA, and they have to make sure that you pass the audit. And so after they were reviewed, they received this letter saying that it was acceptable. And any sizable contract, sometimes they would do a pre-award audit like this here. And so this is a pre-award. It says pre-award accounting system review. Big contracts, they may require something like this here. And all right, so let's go to other compliance that you want to consider. Insurance is going part of your compliance. When you're going after contracts, they might say you need to have insurance that general liability $2 million. And currently your insurance is only $1 million. should you go and get your insurance at that time when you're bidding on a contract?
I would say yes.
Okay, yes. Anybody else say no? No. The answer is no. Because why pay for more insurance than what you need now? But you want to say, in your proposal response, you will say that as a contractor, we will meet or exceed the insurance requirement as established by this contractor. And so when you win the contract, then you go get the insurance, because it takes 2 days to get the, you have 15, 30 days to get mobilization going, right, to start on the project. So you don't want to pay for more insurance than what you need, save your money. Something like insurance, you want to wait until you win a contract. Now, you do want to have general liability for your company. And for those of you who are consultants, you want to make sure you have E&O insurance and other types of professional industry insurance that's in your industry. But from a government, if you're if you're language services and they require that you drive to their office, your employees have to report to their office 3 times a week. They might require that you have auto insurance and that the person has auto insurance. And so in that situation, you can always have the insurance that meets their standard when you get awarded the contract. Unless they say it's required before you submit the proposal. Now, if they say it's required, then yes, you do what they say. If they don't say, they just say, hey, that you need to meet these standards when you are awarded a contract, most of the time they know that you may not always buy certain type of level of insurance, and so it's okay for most of them. Affirmative action plan is managed by OFCCP, the Office of Federal Contract Compliance. They are a subset of the Department of Labor. Anyone likes the Department of Labor? Are they your friend? Now, most of them, they're just trying to get money from you, right? And so, but affirmative action is for when you have 50 employees or more at the federal level, you need to make sure that you have an affirmative action program. And it just means that you're going to meet the requirements. And usually the requirement is 7% of your workforce must be veterans. Did you know that? There's a veteran hiring preference. But if you're smaller than 50 employees, you don't have to worry. But if you're more than 50 employees, you got to hire. And then also a percentage of it has to be ADA compliant, American with Disability Act. So you have to hire a percentage of your staff that have some type of, and so there's different hiring requirements when you get to become a large company. Well, at 50 is medium, 51 is still a medium company. For most of you, you don't have to worry about that yet, but you do need to think about those things. Affirmative action plan is not like you just create one yourself. It's very specific. So when you are at a point where you need to get an affirmative action plan, I would recommend you using let me pull her up here.
Were you pulling it up in terms of DCAA? Do you have to purchase that from the government somewhere?
No, the software? Mm-hmm. No, it's a commercial product, and you buy it in the commercial market through Neal Systems.
Oh.
Yeah. Or you can use QuickBooks for now and just make sure that your accountant understands DCAA compliance, and then they can restructure your charts and everything to make sure that it meets the standard. So FACF stands, I can't always remember their names. So it's a first affirmative something, or I can't remember. But Diana Yance, she's a good friend of mine. She specializes in affirmative action plans, and so if you ever need something like this here, or if you're working with clients who have 50 employees or more, there was a organization based out of Atlanta. They are a multi-international company, but they don't sell to the government. So they thought, right? They said, well, we're not a government contractor. We don't sell to the government. Why should we have an affirmative action plan? So, but they sell lumber, they sell supplies, they sell equipment, and guess who comes to their store and buy all that?
Yeah.
Government employees. They go and they swipe the credit cards. So even though they didn't get a government contract because they're taking government credit cards, they are selling to the government. And they got fined a lot of money because they're a major company. I just don't want to name because this is a recorded session and they're based right here in Atlanta. I don't want to call them out. But they got fined. And so they had to put together an affirmative action plan.
But what did they get fined for?
For not being compliant with the affirmative action, because you have to hire a certain percentage of your staff. You have to be female, certain percentage of your staff has to be minority, certain percentage of your staff have to be and ADA compliant and so forth.
So simply because they were selling to the government?
If you are a government contractor, you sell anything to the government. If you receive $1 from the government, the federal government, you must have a affirmative action plan if you have 50 employees or more. Uh-huh.
And I never did put that two together until I got in class tonight, but I know, you know, sometimes when I'm just going to have a bid package, it would ask you to list how many females you have, how many males you have,
Yeah.
the race of these employees. It says so there. I just did you know, that, do you have affirmative action program?
Yeah.
So this connects with that.
Yes, and that's part of it. But as a small business, there's a little checkbox sometimes. And even when you register in SAM, it's going to ask you about affirmative action. And so you want to, in SAM, you want to check the third box that says, we have not won a contract that requires affirmative action plan or affirmative action program. And so you want to check that third box. Don't check the first one or the second one, check the third one. And saying that you're not required to have a program yet, and that and you haven't won a contract that requires you to do that. But this is a great organization to work with. CAC, PKI. This is just a standard in the industry for accessing. You know how when you go to a facility you need a badge, and that's what that is. Every agency, when you start winning government contract that has security clearance, you need to make sure that your office, when someone comes visit you, the door will lock behind it. You have to buzz them in. When they come in, they have to sign on the roster, and that's all part of certain types of contracts that you win that require security. Like law firms, they're probably going to need that. They're going to need to have a log. They need to make sure that there's locks on the door and certain things like that for security purposes. Ethics program. It's good to have an ethics program. Most of the time, it's just the FAR that say that you're not going to violate, federal acquisition ethics, but you might want to create your own internal ethics program. FedRAMP, if you're in IT, if you're selling cloud services, if you're selling any type of software, not all software, but most software is going to be required to go to FedRAMP. So any type of software, cloud-based. Now, if it's hosted by Amazon, Amazon is already compliant with FedRAMP. So that's not a major issue. But because they already spent the money to go through FedRAMP to make sure that Amazon Cloud Services, Microsoft Cloud Services, all of these major corporations, they've already go through FedRAMP. And so if your service is hosted if you have a software that's hosted on Amazon and you're using that as a service to the government, you should be able to pass FedRAMP. It shouldn't be an issue.
Is Oracle?
I'm 99.999% sure that they're FedRAMP compliant because they're already in the government space. So I think they should be fine. Yeah, but if you do,
tab are we on in software?
this is 942.
Thank you.
FIPS. I don't know what FIPS are. So let's go see what FIPS are. So many things. I know most of the things, but I don't know what this is. So let's go see. Government Computer Security Standards used to approve cryptographics modules. This leads me to something related to this here. National Institute of Standards for Technology, NIST is, yeah, NIST, okay, yes. So this means that what this has to do is that every 2018 and going forward, every single government contractor, if you're winning contracts, must have a cybersecurity plan. And let's jump to that down here, address that a little bit more. So when you win a government contracts, they want to make sure that you have a cybersecurity plan, meaning that when a hacker is trying to attack the government, they're going to try to attack the weakest point, right? And usually the weakest point is your system that's connected to the government system. And so they want to make sure that you have a cyber plan, meaning that should there be someone has a phishing event, so they send you an email, say, hey, you just got a contract with this organization and click on this link and check out, you know, receive your payment, your invoice or whatever. And you click on the link and it actually hijacks your computer and it takes all your information and all your contract number and all your secret information is taken. Well, the government wants you to report that. And so your cybersecurity plan needs to say, hey, we've been breached. We were breached this morning. You have, you know, that part of your cyber plan is we will report a breach within 1 hour or within 12 hours or what. I don't know what the standards are because I'm not an expert in cybersecurity, but you have to, you know, if your client's a law firm and they're doing work for the government, they have to report that their sensitive information was potentially breached. Now, when your sensitive information was breached with Equifax, how long did they take them to report to you?
Wow.
Almost a year, right? The CEO finally felt so bad that he resigned. But it took over a year. 140 million data was breached. Have you guys gone to, there's a Equifax actually put up a website so that you can go and check your profile to see if you were breached. You were one of the 140 million people. Anybody done that yet? You should.
That work for the class action suit.
Yes, but that's separate.
Oh, that's separate.
Yeah, you want to make sure to see if your information was breached, and so you want to sign up on the monitoring. They have a free monitoring system and all that. Part of they're trying to fix their damaged reputation, so they got to try to do something to help out the community. I actually have the links to all that, so let me pull it up so you guys can have that there. Since we're talking about compliance. So the platform is called Trusted ID. And so you can go to Trusted ID and see if you've been breached.
TrustedID.com.
Yeah, Trusted ID, I think. Let me see. Yeah, Trusted ID, TrustedID.com. And I actually went and set up my profile, make sure that, and guess what? I was breached. Yep. So your cyber plans in the software, we actually put some cyber plans in here. Now, again, don't use this here without seeking a cybersecurity expert, but I put some samples in here so that you can have some examples. So let's look at one quickly here. So for those of you who don't have the software yet, you should invest in the software because this here saves you thousands of dollars already, just this plan itself. So let's look through some of the content. So what is your cyber policy? What are the risk management that you have in place? How are you training your personnel, right? Are you training your personnel? You know, if you receive an email that says, hey, you guys just won a contract and you didn't bid on the contract, you might want to train your personnel that is probably a phishing scam. Don't open any Dropbox files that you didn't, any people that send you anything and you don't know who the senders are, even if it's suspicious from someone you know, because what hackers do, or attackers more so. Hacker is a word that can be friendly or unfriendly. Most of the time we use it as unfriendly, but most hackers, that's actually a good terminology. So the hackers, the hackers out, they prefer that we use the word attackers. And so the attackers, what they try to do is they will hack someone that you know's email account, and then that sends out all the different, you know, to you, so because it's someone you know and trust. And so just because it came from someone you know, don't assume that it's good. Do you have a physical security plan, third-party relationship risk, network risk, and all kinds of stuff that's beyond my mind? Because but this is a template. So it doesn't mean that it's perfect, but it's a starting point. It's better to have this than have nothing. But you go through it, and then if you know someone, have them quickly look at this here and see if it, you know, will help. So coming back to the outside of that, coming back to our list here. CPR trained personnel. There are some contracts.
Did you skip the Internet Protocol version 6?
I did, because I didn't necessarily want to talk about it. Why?
I was waiting for that.
Okay.
My buddy Wade, what you talking about?
There's so much stuff, I can't talk about everything. So Internet Protocol version, IPv6 is most version of the Internet Protocol. So this is how the Internet connects and talk to each other. And I don't know too much about this here, but yeah, this is beyond my mind, and you know, you're welcome to read more about it. I put it up here for people who are in technology. If you're dealing with technology in the government space, this is more for people that is in that space, and I use it as a reference so they can do more research on it. But me, I'm not an expert in it. CPR is for most of you. Sometime you're working on a construction project on site and you're doing concrete work, and they're going to require that the supervisor is CPR trained. And if your supervisor on site is not CPR, are you CPR trained?
Yes, I am.
Okay, see, you're already on it. That's good.
So I had a contract where they wanted somebody to be trained.
Okay.
I was that person.
Yeah. So you always want to have one person. If it's a big project, you know, $500,000, $1 million or more, they're always going to require that somebody is CPR trained, because you never know what's going to happen on the job site. DavisBacon, for all of you in construction, DavisBacon are prevailing wage in the government market, to where you have to pay your employees a minimum wage that's higher than the standard federal minimum wage, which is $7.25 for commercial work. Every single federal employees that you hire at a minimum is $10.10, I believe. For federal workers and any contractors that's working on federal projects, you have to pay them a higher minimum wage than what the commercial market is. It's $10.10, I think. Now, some of you in high industry, you don't have to worry, because you're paying more than that. But DavisBacon goes into more details that if you have someone who is a what's a role? What's a welder? Let's see if that's in there. Oh. Let me do this. I'll just pull up the Excel sheet. I mean the PDF. It's easier that way. All right. Oh, not that one. Here we go. Oh, that's not the one also.
But hey, this is sometimes according to the contract too, because I had a contract where I had to pay my finishers $28 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
I had another one.
Yes.
I had to pay them like $25, but I already paid them $24.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course I was gonna wait till next year to give them a dollar raise anyway. They get 25.
Yes, sometime they will specify. I don't know why I can't find it on the internet. But they will tell you specifically what that rate is. And so based on the skill set, based on the job description, they tell you specifically. And because of time, let me keep on going. But it's you can find it on the internet. I just can't find it quickly enough. So I'm gonna continue. But DavisBacon is for construction-related industries. McNamara O'Hara Service Contract Act. Sometimes we just call it SCA, which stands for Service Contract Act. This is for people who are in the janitorial industry, facility workers, security officers, and other type of service industry. You have to make sure that Service Contract Act just means that you have to make sure that you pay your employees health and welfare, which means that there's two rates right now. It used to be just one rate. Right now it's $4.27. If you don't have a health and dental program for your employees, then on top of the salary you're paying them, you have to pay them this additional fee, which is $4.27. And depending on the categories, it can be a little bit higher than that, but at a minimum $4.27. So for example, you're bidding on a project and you're a small business, and so, but it's, you're doing janitorial work for a military facilities, and it's a Service Contract Act, and they say, hey, this is a Service Contract Act, but you don't understand Service Contract Act, so you're bidding on it, and you're paying your employees $12 an hour. But it's a Service Contract Act, and you don't have medical health plans for them and so forth. Well, you say, well, I'm going to bill the government $18 an hour, and I'm going to pay my employees, $12 an hour, so I'm going to make $6 an hour to cover my margins and overhead and so forth. Well, guess what? You find out it's Service Contract Act later, they're going to say, well, no, you have to pay them $4.27 on top of the 12, so that it's going to end up being almost $16.50, and you're billing the government $18, you're making $1.50. You're not going to make any profit. That's not enough to pay your supervisor. That's not enough to pay your overhead, and so you end up losing losing money on this project here. You're not going to make any profit. In fact, it will probably be a loss after your management, your supervisor, your overhead. So keep that in mind when you're bidding on a certain type of contract. If you see SCA, make sure that you have a plan for them, or you're accounting $4.27. Question over here?
Is that managed by the McNamara O'Hara, or is it managed by OFCCP standards?
It's managed by I don't know who managed that, but the contracting officer and their compliance team is going to make sure that you are in compliance with
So the
SCA.
OFCC.
Yeah, OFCC, I don't know if they manage this. They just manage affirmative action plan more so. Yeah. But somebody does handle this. I don't know who. It could be OFCCP.
I have a question
Mhm.
related to contract compliance, and I've completed all of the paperwork for GSA schedule.
Mhm.
And in there, we have to do a compensation plan.
Mm-hmm.
And really, of course, I'm not a student of all of the FAR regulations, but
Yeah.
I know that in working with GSA help services, basically, this is going back to the backstory behind some of the compliance, because you have to have a satisfactory compensation
Yes.
plan. And that only relates to government appropriations,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to some clients in terms of look at it and say, well, do we have to bring our other compensation for staff that's within the organization? But
Mhm.
this applies strictly to
Federal contracts related projects only.
Right.
Yeah. So it doesn't necessarily apply to private sector. You can just, private sector, for example, minimum wage is $7.27. Anybody know the state of Georgia minimum wage? It's $5.10 or something. Yes. Yes.
You said Georgia, not Ghana.
Yeah, the state of Georgia is $5.10, I think. It's $5 something. It might be $5.75, but it's $5 something. But because the federal is higher, then that supersedes the Georgia's minimum wage. That's the only reason why we don't pay our Georgia employees, $5.20. Yeah. Now some states, the state minimum wage is higher than the federal minimum wage, so they pay that. Yeah. Yeah. So they pay the state minimum wage, not the federal minimum wage. So whoever is higher is that, in that state, that's the one that regulates how employees are paid. Few other things. TAA, Trade Agreement Acts. Anybody know what that is?
I've run across that in terms of it's in some international work.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this has to do mainly if you're buying products. If you're buying products from overseas and it's coming to the U.S. and you're going to sell it to the government, the federal government, mainly if you're selling to the federal government, the product has to be from one of these approved countries. So guess who's not on this list?
North Korea.
Yes, North Korea is not on the list, but a major country that sells to the U.S. China is not on the list. Yeah. So you cannot sell products that's made in China to the federal government. So keep that in mind.
Why? Because they have the cheapest labor?
No, because they're not willing to comply by Trade Agreement Act's standards. Mm-hmm.
I had a promotional company that was one of my clients, and they would buy a product from Shenzhen
Mm-hmm.
and ship it into California, house it, and I think they came into a major compliance issue because some of the products was going to, I think it was the Air Force.
Mm-hmm.
And but yeah, that was a huge.
Yeah, it has to be final assembled in the U.S. So if you can buy parts and then you assemble in the U.S., then it could be, but it doesn't apply to everything. There are exceptions, like electronic parts. There are a few things that's like only manufactured in China. I mean, it's not manufactured anywhere else. So there are a few exceptions on a few things, but like uniforms, you cannot buy from China and sell it to the U.S. government. Clothing, none of that stuff. And so there's certain medical supplies I think might fall under that. So there's certain things that it has to be made in the U.S. or compliant with one of these countries here. and so keep that in mind as you're buying and selling parts and components to the government. Buy American Act, that mainly has to do with uniforms and clothing. So almost every single type of clothing, it has to be final made in the U.S. That goes under the Berry Amendment Act. So quality assurance programs, ISO 9001, CMMI, ITEL. CMI is technology, ITEL is technology, ISO is for manufacturing and certain industries and distributions and logistics. You got to make sure that you have some of these programs in place. Usually, if you're going after big contracts, they're going to require these. If you're going after $2-3 million or less, they're probably not going to require any of this stuff here. So until you get big enough to put in place a assurance program, quality assurance program in ISO, it's going to cost you about $15,000. Yeah, probably at the low end. And so for like a small firm, so it's going to be expensive. So I don't necessarily think you want to invest on this here until you start to go after big contracts.
Having some of these certifications, might they provide you with additional consideration when going after contracts that possibly don't require them?
Ask the question again. I'll make sure I understand.
Might a contracting officer give you additional consideration if you have a certification that's not specifically required by the RFQ?
Yeah. So sometime, let's assume you do have an ISO, quality assurance certification, and you're working with a contracting officer. That might work to your advantage, right? So assuming the contracting officer is putting a project out, and it's open competition without this quality assurance program in place. Well, everybody doesn't have a program. So they might say, well, hey, I want to work with you, and since you got this, we're going to make this part of the requirements. And that eliminates a whole bunch of competitors. So that's part of why you might want to get it if you have a good relationship with a contracting officer and they're writing the scope of the solicitation and the requirements, that might work to your favor in that situation. So, you never know. I generally go on the side of, hey, don't invest in it until you need it. Some things you do need to invest in. Quality assurance program, once you go after a big contract, you want to invest in that. All right, so let's talk about closure. Closure for you is very easy. Closure for the government is very complex. So I talk about this from a perspective that when you're at the point where you're ready to close out the project and get paid and moving on to the project, make sure you put yourself on the contracting officer's perspective, because they go through a lot of paperwork to wrap things up. So don't treat them like, oh, I'm done, see you later. Engage them, say, hey, is there anything else you need? I want to make sure that I'm closing out this project so that it makes your job easier. Make sure you communicate that to them and be their friend, because these are the things that they have to go through, right? They have to go through all these different things, because they have the DCA auditor they have to work with, they have to work with the legal team, they have to work with financial community, they have to work with the PCO, the procurement contractor officer, the administrative contractor officer, the termination contractor officer. They have to work with all these different people, and they have to work with you, the contractor, and they have to work with the client, the agency that they're working with. So they have all these different moving pieces. You want to make sure that their job is a joy. And they're gonna appreciate you, and they're gonna give you more contracts in the future, give you sole source contract, or lean towards you. If everything else is equal with a competitor, they're gonna lean towards you because you're easier to work with. So this is like a training for contracting officer to close out. And so you want to read through this here to see what they go through, and they have to train them to how to close out. So you see that all these arrows here, Contract physically completed. Compliance with terms and conditions. Legal matters resolved. Closeout documents initiated. Closeout documents obtained. Final settlement and payment. All records cleared and contract closed. This is a high level of what they have to go through. So for you, it's just like, okay, here's my invoice and you're paid. But make sure that you're helping them. So I can't stress that enough. So here's a sample closeout document. So for those of you joining us online, feel free to type in questions you have. I forgot to tell you that. If you have questions, type it in there. So you see what they go through? They have to go through all this here. DD form 1597, the checklist of all this stuff here. And so let's look at their closeout checklist. Open hyperlink. Copy hyperlink. Can't find it. But yeah, but they go through a lengthy process, so just keep that in mind. Make it easy for them. The contracting officer is never your enemy. They should always be your friend, and you should always treat them as if they're the customer, even though the customer is the agency. Because the contracting officer works on behalf of the agency. So for example, GSA is a contracting office. They work for many different agencies, but some agencies have a contracting office department, and then they have the agency, the supervisor, the program managers. They have all of those that have the need. And to them, the client is the agency, the contracting officer. So you want to make sure that not only the agencies are happy, that the contracting officer are happy. Do a good job with that. You'll be in good shape. You won't have to worry too much about this other stuff. All right, so we're coming up to the minute here. Last minute. So any questions about compliance? I know we went through quite a bit, and I can't go to so much detail because it's just too much. So I cover enough to kind of get you an idea of what you need to research more for your company. All of you do need to have a cybersecurity plan. Those are some things that you must have at some point. And once you start winning contract, you want to make sure you have it. In fact, it's better to go ahead and put it in place in advance. Should you have a employee handbook?
Yes.
Yes, I didn't cover that here, but that's part of compliance. We covered that way earlier, so I didn't put it back up here in compliance again, but you do need to have an employee handbook. Your employee handbook has to do with how you hire in the event that there's a sexual harassment. How do you handle that? Who do they go to? Do they report it to HR? All of these things needs to be in your HR into your employee handbook. Do you need to have a safety program?
Yes.
Yes. For all of you who's in any type of service industry, especially like construction, you must have a safety program. And that's part of, most of the time they will ask you before you even bid, do you have a safety program, and so forth. Often you're going to see this terminology. You're going to see this terminology tied to something we talked about, but QASP. Anybody know what that stands for? Quality assurance surveillance plan. Now, often the contracting officer will ask for this here as part of your proposal submission. They're going to say, okay, hey, you know what? What's your quality assurance surveillance plan? And sometimes they actually give you the form, and you just say, okay, on this here, this is our plan. On this step, this is our plan. And if they do that, it's easier. But if you don't, you want to look at a few samples. I don't have any samples in this software, I think, because I just haven't taking the time to put together one for this year, but you do need to have this year as well. As part of your big project you submit, you're going to need a quality assurance surveillance plan. All right, those of you online, any questions, type in your questions on the bottom. We'll take a few seconds to answer any questions anybody have online. In the chat area, you can type in your questions in the chat area. I can see it down there. If not, anybody here in class, questions, last minute questions about compliance, or something we didn't cover tonight that you want to ask about? All right, so good. So, oh, we got a question coming in. So, will you be sharing this presentation as well? This presentation, this session is recorded. And so the sessions from the deep dive training sessions, these are recorded. And for all of you who are members, the way you access this here is you go into your Gov Association profile. And it's under, there's a little tab you see here, it doesn't show up here. It's on the right hand side, it's a members only. It doesn't show up until you log in. So I'm gonna log in, and I'm gonna log in and it's gonna say members only. You see that? Now it shows up. All of you are members, so you should know your login. Log into your profile, and where it says members only, you wanna click on this here. And it's going to say, hey, the Gov Training Vault is right here. So you want to go to the Gov Training Vault. This is where all of the videos, we record all of these sessions so we can put in the Gov Training Vault so that you can go review it and watch it. And because sometimes I go over it fast, so you may want to watch it again. So you go to the Gov Training Vault, click on that, and it says, okay, click on this here to access the information. So you want to come here and create your profile, your email, password, and then if you already logged in, just click login here. But if you haven't logged in, if you've already have an account, you can just go to the govtrainingvault.com right here. And where's the login? I think the login is way down here. I need to put the login in a more prominent place. Yeah, I do need to redo this here so I can put the login up here on the top, because most of the time you log in from our site. And so, but for the Gov Training Vault, we charge $39 a month for non-members. So you guys are getting a great value by having the Gov Training Vault at your fingertips. Will you be sharing? No, you're good. Okay, awesome. All right, everybody, thanks for joining us for another session of Deep Dive Training. Tonight we cover compliance. Next week we will be covering, let's see, next week is our association meeting. So we will be honoring veterans. So if you have veteran friends, come, and then if you're not a veteran, come, because that's where you can meet some veteran companies. At some point you're gonna need to partner with veteran companies so that you can work with DOD and the VA. If the VA is one of the agencies you want to work with, you should team up with a veteran-owned business, because the VA likes to work with veteran-owned businesses. And so you want to have someone like that as part of your team. Okay, we'll see y'all next Tuesday for association meeting at 6 o'clock. Event starts at 6:30. Networking is at 6 o'clock. For those of you online, we will not be recording live stream. We won't be doing live stream. We will record it and put in the Gov Training Vault, but we won't be doing it live streaming like we did this week here. So association meeting right now, we haven't started doing it live streaming yet, but in the future we will do live streaming also for association meetings for all of you who can't physically come to that, but you can do it. You can watch all the training sessions, all the association meeting online after the event. Take care, everybody.